empowering, and soon she found herself crying, sobbing in happiness, completely forgetting the sleepless hours and the loneliness, at least for a few seconds. Yes, having a baby surely was the greatest thing that had ever happened to Susan, and even though it was tough right now, she was going to long desperately to have this time back for many years to come. August 2010. I think something is wrong. Susan held the phone close to her ear, her heart pounding in her chest, Chandelle in her arms, fussing and crying. Susan tried to swing her from side to side to calm her down, but it didn't work. "You always say that," Bob said from the other end. "No, this is different. Something is off with her. She's burning up," Susan said, flustered. "So she has a fever. Well, that's normal in babies. They have to get used to the environment outside the mother's womb. Babies get sick and they can endure a much higher fever than adults." Susan nodded quietly while her husband spoke. He was, after all, a doctor. He had his own practice close to where they lived in Savannah. He saw many worried mothers come in with their babies. "It's probably just a virus," he said. "There's a lot of that going around these days. We'll monitor it. She'll probably snap out of it in no time." "Okay," Susan said. She hung up and took Chandelle to the living room, where she sat down and tried to breastfeed, but Chandelle suddenly wouldn't eat. "That's not normal," Susan mumbled to the baby, who was now crying louder than before. "You usually always eat, almost all day long. What's wrong with you, baby girl, huh?" Susan tickled Chandelle on her stomach. When that only made her cry louder, she checked her diaper. But it wasn't even wet. "That's odd. She hasn't peed since last night. It's probably just a virus." Susan repeated her husband's words, while trying to calm the baby down. But nothing worked. Soon, Susan felt the frustration rise in her body, and she started to walk around the house, swinging the baby in her arms, hushing her, but still nothing worked. She tried putting her down for a nap, thinking the virus and fever were probably making her exhausted, and she probably needed a nap. But putting her down made Chandelle scream even louder. Susan let her stay in the bed for a few minutes, sneaking out of the room, thinking it would be easier for Chandelle to fall asleep if her mother wasn't in the room. But after 10 minutes of standing outside the door to the nursery, listening to the baby scream her lungs out, Susan couldn't take it anymore. She stormed inside and grabbed Chandelle in her arms and held her close. The baby suddenly stopped crying. Susan took in a deep breath. Finally. But the joy only lasted a few seconds before Susan realized there was a reason the baby had stopped crying. She had become unresponsive. The baby wasn't looking at her at all. She wasn't crying. She wasn't babbling. She was hardly breathing, but she was burning hot. Susan let out a small shriek. "Chandelle! Oh my God! Oh my God!" August 2010. Bob was held up at his practice and arrived at the hospital an hour after Susan and Chandelle did. He rushed into the room where Susan was sitting, holding her baby's small, lifeless hand. As her eyes met his, Susan stood up. "What did they say?" he asked. "She has an infection. Apparently she swallowed fluid during delivery and that caused it," Susan said. "She had a 104-degree temperature when we got here. They hooked her up to antibiotics." Bob breathed a sigh of relief. "Good gracious." "We barely made it," she said between sobs. She had been holding her tears in for so long now, there was no holding them back anymore. Bob grabbed her in his arms and hugged her. "Hey, take it easy. She's going to be all right. The antibiotics will help, and before you know it, she'll be back home with us again." "I just can't. I was so scared, Robert. I was terrified." Susan only called her husband by his birth name when she was troubled, or if he had done something she didn't approve of, or hurt her somehow. Otherwise, it was always Bob, or Bobby, or Babe. She did it because she wanted him to know she blamed him a little for this happening, because he didn't react when she asked him to in the first place, because it could have gone really wrong if she hadn't walked back into the room and picked Chandelle up when she did. What if she had waited a few more minutes outside the door? What if Chandelle had gone quiet like she did and Susan had believed she had simply fallen asleep? Then what? Just because he kept telling her it was a virus, a simple virus, that she would beat in no time. I know, he said. "But it's all over now. She's in the best hands here. I know the pediatrician and he's